Bonjour à vous tous. C'est un plaisir de vous accueillir pour cette session. J'ouvre maintenant la séance.
I call this meeting to order. Welcome to meeting number 26 of the Standing Committee on Veterans Affairs, pursuant to Standing Order 108-2 and the motion adopted on November 25th, 2025. The committee is meeting to discuss the rehabilitation services awarded to the PCVRS.
It's taking place in a hybrid format pursuant to the standing orders. Members are attending in person in the room, and I know we don't have anyone. All our witnesses and our member of parliament are here in person this morning, so thank you. Before we continue, I will also ask that all in-person participants consult the guidelines written on the cards on the table. These measures are in place to help prevent audio and feedback incidents and to protect the health and safety of all participants, including the interpreters. We thank them all the time. Je vous remercie beaucoup, chers interprètes. You will also notice a QR code on the card, which links on the table to for a short awareness video. Pour garantir le bon déroulement de la réunion,
in order to ensure that the meeting goes smoothly, I would like to share some information with the witnesses and members. Please wait for me to give you the floor regarding interpretation if those who are on Zoom, and I think that there aren't any people on Zoom. And so for those who are in the room, you can use the earpieces and choose the channel that you would like to listen to. A reminder that all comments from members and witnesses need to go through the chair.
Avant de débuter, and very quickly, I would like to start by adopting the budget, l'adoption du budget supplémentaire.
I want to adopt the budget.
Witnesses, I would like to briefly discuss a supplementary budget that was distributed to the committee on March 16. The purpose of this budget is to fund the last few meetings for our study on suicide prevention among veterans. Is it the will of the committee to adopt the budget? Merci beaucoup. Écoutez, on va maintenant commencer donc l'étude du suivi du contrat.
We're going to be looking at the follow-up on the rehabilitation services to PCVRS. I would like to now welcome our witnesses and thank them for being with us. From the department, we have Jane Hicks, Acting Senior Assistant Deputy Minister, Service Delivery from the Department of Veterans Affairs, Jonathan Adams, Director General Finance, and Natalie Pham, Director General Field Operations. Thank you.
Mark Health Group, we have Sonia Locker, President, who's here with us. Partners in the Canadian Veterans Rehabilitation Service, Madame, je crois c'est Dr. Sylvie Bourgeois. Merci beaucoup d'être ici. Medical.
Thank you for being with us. Medical Director, Mental Health, and René Deschamps, Vice President, Veterans Health and PCVRS Contract Manager.
C'est un plaisir de vous accueillir.
Thank you for being with us.
WCG Services, Madame Tanya Bennett, Chief Executive Officer. Nous allons commencer avec vos...
We're going to start with your opening remarks, and then we will move to a Q&A with committee members. I would like to invite Ms. Jane Hicks, Acting Senior Assistant Deputy Minister, to speak.
Madam Chair, and thank you to the committee members for the opportunity to appear to provide an update on the Rehabilitation Services contract. My name is Jane Hicks, Assistant Deputy Minister responsible for the Service Delivery Branch at Veterans Affairs Canada. Joining me today are Natalie Pham, Director General of Field Ops, and Jonathan Adams, Director General of Finance. Le programme de service de réadaptation et d'assistance professionnelle.
Veterans Affairs Canada's Rehabilitation and Vocational Assistance Program plays a central role in supporting veterans and their families as they transition to civilian life. The program offers personalized support to veterans who are ill or injured to help them overcome barriers to reintegration by providing medical, psychosocial, and vocational services aimed at improving their health and well-being.
Bien-être. It has now been over 2 years since VAC transitioned to a new rehabilitation service delivery model, working with partners in Canadian Veterans Rehabilitation Services, or PCVRS for short. Under the previous model, case managers coordinated services directly with individual providers. This often led to inconsistencies regionally, fragmented care, and significant administrative burden to case managers. The current model moves to a nationally coordinated interdisciplinary approach. Rehabilitation specialists coordinate services through PCVRS, allowing VAC managers to focus on oversight, veteran support, and rehabilitation outcomes. The new model also ensures standardized assessments, reporting tools, and access to specialized rehabilitation expertise across the country. This is particularly important as veterans' needs become more complex, especially in the area of mental health. Les vétérans et les vétérans ont...
Veterans experienced changes during this transition. They continued their rehabilitation while new processes and specialists were being put in place. Our priority has been to ensure continuity of care throughout this period.
Throughout the rehabilitation journey, we have actively sought feedback from participants and monitor program outcomes. While it is still early, results are encouraging. More than 70% of participants have reported improvements in functional capacity or overall health and well-being. At the core of this approach is teamwork. Rehabilitation services rehabilitation services are delivered through integrated teams and consider veterans' medical, psychosocial, and vocational needs together. VAC case managers, PCVRS rehabilitation service specialists, and rehabilitation service professionals work with the veteran as a coordinated team. Each discipline brings specialized expertise, and decisions are made at the appropriate level to ensure clarity, continuity, and coordinated support for the veteran. Through a partnership between LifeMark and WCG, PCVRS currently supports about 11,700 veterans across Canada. These participants represent about 6% of VAC's client population who have complex needs. Approximately 74% are experiencing mental health conditions alongside physical health challenges. The needs are reflected in program spending. In 24-25, approximately $184 million was invested in rehabilitation services, with the majority supporting psychosocial rehabilitation, followed by medical and vocational services. Importantly, these investments are delivering results. Veterans completing the program report improvements in functional capacity, overall health and well-being, and life satisfaction. We recognize the access to services can be challenging, particularly in rural and remote communities. PCVRS continues to expand its national provider network, which now includes close to 15,000 clinicians, more than 50 LifeMark clinics, and over 600 affiliate clinic locations. Approximately 30% of providers offer services in French, and efforts are ongoing to strengthen bilingual capacity. Hybrid and virtual options are being expanded where appropriate to improve access. It is important to emphasize that VAC case managers retain full decision-making authority regarding veterans' rehabilitation plans. PCVRS provides clinical recommendations and delivers services, but it does not make independent decisions about veteran care. Outcome measure and ongoing performance monitoring allow us to identify trends, address service gaps, and continually improve service delivery. Rehabilitation is specialized and time-limited. It involves assessments, participation in services, and engagement. While assessments and documentation can sometimes feel repetitive, standardized tools are used to ensure consistent and equitable decisions and to measure progress. When veterans require ongoing care beyond rehabilitation, they continue to have access to other VAC programs, benefits, and treatment services. At the core of its program, the updated rehabilitation service delivery model is built on collaboration, specialized expertise, and a strong commitment to supporting health, well-being, and successful transition of those who have served Canada. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Perfect timing, Ms. Six. Thank you very much. I forgot to mention I am the timekeeper. So I have to apologize to our witnesses. Sometimes I don't want to be rude. Sometimes I will have to maintain that order. So please bear with me. Look at me. I'm going to try to give you some insight about sometimes this would be probably like last 30 seconds. Okay, so thank you very much. On this, I will now invite Mrs. Lockyer for 5 minutes, please.
I think actually it's Tanya's going to go first. Yeah, no worries.
Mrs. Bennett.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Tanya Bennett, and I'm CEO of WCG Services and the executive sponsor for Partners in Canadian Veterans Rehabilitation Services, or PCVRS. I'm here today with Sonia Lockyer, CEO of and President of Lifemark Health Group, Renee Deschamps, our PCVRS Contract Manager, Dr. Sylvie Bourgeois, our Medical Director for PCVRS, and also National Director of Psychology and Mental Health Services for Lifemark. PCVRS was established to coordinate and administer the program on behalf of VAC. We are a partnership between Lifemark Health Group, a leading provider of healthcare assessments and rehabilitation services with over 28 years of experience, and WCG Services, a Canadian leader in the design and delivery of employment and vocational services over 30 years. Our collaboration synergizes diverse expertise to enable a robust national framework for veterans rehabilitation. Our mission at PCVRS is to provide Canadian veterans and their families with best-in-class rehabilitation services underpinned by compassionate care, dignity, and respect. We support veterans' health and well-being through medical, psychosocial, and vocational rehabilitation services. Through our nationwide bilingual and trauma-informed rehabilitative care, we enable improved access to quality services for Canadian veterans. Our mandate through the contract includes assessing the rehabilitation potential of veterans for each of their eligible health conditions. We focus on maximizing restoration of function and providing psychosocial skills and strategies so that participants achieve their individualized goals to improve their role performance at home, in their communities, and at work. PCVRS functions as the coordinator of rehabilitation assessment and treatment services, operating within the framework and policies set forth by VAC. We deliver an interdisciplinary service, and our rehabilitation service specialists, or RSSs, play a central role. RSSs are health and vocational professionals who support veterans through developing their rehabilitation plans, coordinating services, and facilitating their rehab progress. RSSs coordinate extensively with professionals who work within interprofessional programs and stepped care models, including occupational therapists, psychologists, psychotherapists, physiotherapists, kinesiologists, and medical and vocational specialists. This integrated model supports veterans to receive seamless care across their rehabilitation journeys. Our approach ensures each veteran is supported by the right team of professionals at the right time, using evidence-based rehabilitation approaches throughout assessment and treatment services. Positive outcomes for veterans are supported through our performance and quality framework. We invite program participants to complete outcome measure surveys at 3 different points in their rehabilitation journey. This provides us with feedback that helps us adapt and continuously strengthen our service delivery. Since our services began, 74% of participants who completed their plan report improved functional capacity or overall well-being, and 82% report improved life satisfaction. We also focus on ensuring veterans receive timely service. In the last quarter, over 800 participants in the program received their first contact from PCVRS within an average of 1 business day of receiving the referral from VAC. And participants' initial rehabilitation assessments with their RSSs occurred within an average of 6 business days. Intake occurred within 24 days, then assessments within 33 days, and rehabilitation services began an average of 21 days after the referral was completed. PCVRS metrics stand in contrast to wait times for specialized health services that are in high demand nationally, and which can extend to many months. I will now invite my colleague, Sonia, to elaborate further on how PCVRS delivers timely and effective care.
Thank you, Madam Chair and committee members. My name is Sonia, President and CEO of Lifemark Health Group. It is a privilege to be here today to discuss our collective commitment to veterans. Before we get into questions, I thought it would be helpful to push on 3 points that seem to come up in questions about the program. The first one being how it's different and distinct from other programs that veterans have access to. The second, the breadth and composition of the network itself. And last but not least, the governance structure that underpins the program itself, including the ownership structure for LifeMark. As a proud Canadian veteran myself, I know firsthand the dedication and sacrifice it takes for all of our veteran community. Deeply personal to me. The unique challenges that many face transitioning into civilian life is what we focus on. The personal understanding informs our work, for sure, LifeMark's work, and fuels our collective commitment to making Canadian veterans receive the best possible care, tailored and individualized where possible to their specific needs and expectations. The RSVP program is distinct from other treatment benefits that veterans have access to. It's additive to other benefits program, and it is solely focused on rehabilitation and function regainment. As Jane noted, prior to our RSVP, veterans, through their case manager, engage with individual practitioners, but not in a coordinated manner where practitioners were speaking to each other and the veteran was integrated in case conferences continually and regularly. The design of the program was meant to create improved care coordination. It does focus, as many have said, on 3 areas of rehabilitation: medical, psychosocial, as well as vocational. And this collaborative view to the program makes it different and unique, not only in Canada, but internationally. The program is voluntary, and it is designed for veterans who are really interested in taking a more intensive and team-based approach that covers the full spectrum of rehabilitation. The breadth and composition of the PCVRS network was designed to be national, a network of qualified rehabilitation professionals. While LifeMark is part of that network, we actually represent roughly 27% of the 1,250 clinics that are available to veterans across the country. Veterans are able to access care from both LifeMark as well as non-LifeMark providers within the network. Just to put a little bit more nuance on that, there's roughly 15,000 clinicians within the network today. 12,000 of them are independent community practitioners. All of our service providers are required to complete VAC-approved training, including standards for veteran-centered care, trauma-informed care. Sylvie can answer questions on that if you're interested. Our approach ensures care is personalized and also accountable. And what that means is that we do have clear administrative and reporting requirements in place, including required collaboration between care providers and participants using VAC-approved reporting templates and defined timelines for reporting. Finally, I would like to take the opportunity to address questions regarding LifeMark's ownership structure. We are a Canadian organization. As Tanya mentioned, we actually have 28 years of experience in delivering rehabilitation services in communities across the country. Our leadership team is Canadian, our clinicians are Canadian. The care that we provide is delivered locally in clinics embedded within the communities we serve. The PCVRS contract was awarded in June of 2021, following a competitive federal procurement process, and is one of many national rehabilitation contracts that LifeMark has the privilege of delivering. The acquisition of LifeMark by Shoppers Drug Mart occurred in May of 2022. That change in ownership did not alter the structure of the contract, nor how services have been delivered or are being delivered to veterans today. Clinical decision-making, professional standards, and service delivery are governed by our contractual obligations with health service providers, as well as the Canadian regulatory frameworks that govern our clinical providers. In closing, the partnership between WCG and LifeMark under PCVRS exists for one reason: to serve Canadian veterans. This network was built to provide structured, accountable, and clinically grounded rehabilitation services. We understand the responsibility that comes in with delivering this program. We are accountable for the outcomes. We are accountable for the stewardship of public funds. We are committed to continuous improvement, most importantly, and in collaboration with VAC, hope to continue on that journey. Thank you for your time and attention today.
Ms. Locker, thank you very much, and thank you for your service. I always like to, on behalf of all of us, say thank you. So we'll have a round of questions. The first round is 6 minutes. Again, I am the gatekeeper, and I call this the clock keeper. So if I have to interrupt either our Member of Parliament or yourself, I apologize in advance. Everybody knows they have time beside themselves too to know, but it is a 6 minutes round. It will start with Mr. Richards for 6 minutes.
Sure. In 2023, this committee released a report on the implementation of the PCVRS contract, and there were several recommendations made in that report, essentially none of which were acted upon. And I would suggest that this is the heart of how this government is failing veterans, that there's a failure to listen and to act upon concerns that are being heard from veterans and those who serve them. So I'd like to go through some of those recommendations and see if it'll help us to enlighten on where we're at. So the first recommendation of that report was essentially to just ensure that veterans that are participating in the program are directly informed about the changes and how that will relate to their work with their case manager and what kind of changes are coming their way. And I think there was some initial communication that kind of happened and things like that, but there's clearly a lot of confusion that continues to exist here about what is there for veterans and what isn't and who they work with. I mean, I almost kind of look at today as a bit of a visual representation of that confusion. There's so many people at the table that wraps around the sides of the table, and I'm not even necessarily sure I know who to ask my questions to. So you can only imagine how a veteran must feel when they don't have a clue who they're supposed to go to and who's in charge of what. And that seems to be the problem. And that I guess what I'd like to the first question I'd like to ask. I'll start with Veterans Affairs. Are veterans supposed to be able to work with the service provider that under this contract that they wish to work with? If there was an existing provider, a new provider they'd like to, are they supposed to be able to engage with the service provider of their choice, or is it something that's mandated upon them who they work with under this contract?
Madam Chair, if I may, I think there's a couple of things. The model differs a little bit than the previous arrangement we have in place. We have a rehabilitation team in place that looks at the needs of the particular veteran, their needs, their requirements, and then we match the veteran with a provider based on those circumstances. So it's not a provider of choice as per Medavie Blue Cross in the past. That being said, with respect to treatment, veterans are able to maintain their providers, the treatment providers that they have had in place, providing that there is a clinical need to do so. And in many instances, they do keep those providers.
It doesn't really line up with what we're hearing from veterans. I mean, there was a really good article even over, I think it was over the weekend in the Toronto Star that sort of really highlights all of this. But it's certainly something we hear all the time. So I guess I'll ask, and I'm not sure who, if PCVRS or whoever thinks they're appropriate to answer this question, but we're hearing all kinds of reports of veterans telling us that they're being forced to try and work with people who are within your network, and they're saying that they want to be able to work with the person they were working with before, and they feel like they're being pressured and forced to make a decision to go somewhere else that they don't feel comfortable with. Is that happening, and is it supposed to be happening?
So the direction from PCVRS is that every provider is encouraged to join the network. Providers that PCVRS providers, RSPs, have to complete mandatory training, VAC-approved mandatory training, as well as agree to utilize the VAC-approved report templates and agree to report the reporting frequency and utilize the portal for secure exchange of information. Okay. Participants, if the participant's current existing provider is unwilling to join the PCVRS network, they may be asked to switch to a PCVRS trained clinician. Yes.
Okay. Well, I can tell you that there seems to be a lot of confusion around this, and there seems to be a lot of concern around this, and I would suggest to both organizations here today that you need to do better in this regard. Let me turn to the second recommendation of that report. And that was essentially indicating to the government that they need to maintain regular communication with the Union of Veterans Affairs Employees and make sure that they're consulted with before making changes to programs of this nature. And I know the union expressed a lot of concerns about the confusion they had when this contract was implemented. I believe that they would probably still tell you that if they were here today. And certainly we've heard that in relation to the cuts being made at the Bureau of Pension Advocates and how they were not consulted by Veterans Affairs prior to those cuts being made that are going to massively impact veterans. So, I mean, I guess I don't even know what question to ask in regards to that recommendation because it's just clearly not happening. Does anyone want to suggest otherwise?
You have 20 seconds.
Madam Chair, certainly. I can tell you that there is regular and ongoing communication with the Union of Veterans Affairs. Certainly, my predecessor, Mr. Stephen Harris, along with myself, meet regularly, at least monthly, with the union. And we've also had working groups where we've engaged the union to make service improvements.
It's interesting.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Richards. I will now pass the floor for 6 minutes to Mr. Casey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I didn't intend to go here, but I think that, Ms. Hicks, you need probably the full 6 minutes to respond to Mr. Richards' assertion that the 10 recommendations made in the 2023 report of this committee have not been adhered to. So let's work through them. The first recommendation was that VAC directly inform veterans of the changes resulting from the new contract. Have you done that?
Yes, Madam Chair.
The one with respect to the Union of Veterans Affairs Employees, I think you've responded to that. The third was that veterans, VAC employees, and service providers be informed of any change in the delivery of rehabilitation services. Have you done that?
Yes.
The fourth was that VAC commit to meeting regularly with veterans advocates and experts who make up the ministerial advisory groups.
We have met with the advisory groups periodically.
The fifth, that VAC acknowledge the gaps in its initial case manager communication strategy and specify which of the responsibilities will be transferred to PCVRS specialists. Have you done that?
Yes.
That VAC hire more permanent case managers to limit the number of cases assigned to each case manager to a maximum of 25.
We have, sorry, go ahead, Madam Chair.
I think, Madam Chair, since 2016, VAC have had temporary resources added to the case manager. Today, we have not reached the 25-to-1, but we're getting closer to the 25-to-1. And that is the situation right now. We do have additional resources, temporary resources, to support case management.
Thank you, Ms. Pham. That VAC ensure that the conditions offered to providers registering with PCVRS will support the retention of healthcare professionals who have experience with the unique services provided to veterans.
We have seen, Madam Chair, we've seen a significant growth in the provider network with the PCVRS contract. There's approximately 15,000 providers in the network, clinicians in the network at this point in time.
That VAC specify the mechanisms that will allow it to oversee the implementation of the rehabilitation program management contract and to ensure that the quality of services delivered by PCVRS and its providers.
VAC has a robust quality performance and quality assurance framework in place to oversee the management of the contract.
The VAC provide the committee with a comprehensive update on the impacts of the rehabilitation contract awarded to PCVRS by November of 2023.
And that was completed and submitted to the committee.
Thank you. And finally, that the Office of the Veterans Ombudsman be asked to publish a report in 1 year's time on the effects it has had on veterans, VAC employees, and service providers.
The Ombudsman has not published a report, but that is not within the purview of my responsibilities.
So when you're accused of not fulfilling any of the 10 recommendations, in summary, how would you respond?
That we have fulfilled the recommendations, and I would say that there's been numerous improvements since we were last at committee. We've provided additional training, information to case managers, communications to veterans, and we've worked extensively with PCVRS to improve the contract in place.
Thank you. How much time do I have? Sorry?
2 minutes.
Thank you. We have heard from one panel of witnesses in connection with this study on February 23rd, and there were several items that were raised in that testimony. I trust that you've all had an opportunity to review it. I'd like to raise some of these things, and I'm going to stay with you, Ms. Hicks, but feel free to invite others to chime in. And if there are specific things that were said on February 23rd that you wish to address, just ignore my question and go ahead and do it, okay? So I'm going to start with testimony that was offered by a psychologist with the Alpha Institute by the name of Mr. Bernard, Dr. Bernard. And he maintained that the continuity of care should be the cornerstone of the program. Could you respond to that?
Continuity of care is really important as part of the rehabilitation program. Based on the relationship that we have with veterans, case managers take the information that we have and provide them to PCVRS as part of to the rehabilitation service specialists, and then on to the rehab services professionals to build the rehabilitation plan. And I'll turn it over to my colleague at PCVRS, Madam Chair, if that is okay.
Madam Chair, so continuity of services includes coordination of services. And so when participants are referred to the rehab program, we, through various assessments, are conscious of their circle of care, their existing providers, but more so trying to understand what these providers are doing in order to see where rehab-focused care fits. And so for some, it may be in parallel where these providers will remain while rehab-focused providers will come for time-limited
Dr.
focus.
Bourgeois, I'm so sorry. I have to be fair to everybody. I sincerely apologize to you, Dr. Bourgeois. Our next person will be addressing you in French, so make sure that for those that do not have the pleasure of having our two official language have the little oreillette, okay? Perfect. Madame Gaudreau pour 6 minutes.
Merci beaucoup, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you very much, Chair. I would like for us to talk about care. Earlier, you talked about training. I'm not sure who could better explain this to me. What training is offered to employees in order to offer care?
Merci.
Thank you. We have two categories of providers. We have those rehabilitation experts, and we have professionals who offer rehabilitation services. So we try to choose these providers carefully, and we offer mandatory training. My question is whether we talk about military culture. Yes, we do include military culture. We talk about trauma-informed care. We focus on mental health issues and comorbidities with physical health. We focus on suicide and risk management protocols. We offer training that is focused on data management and data protection. So that's at the beginning when employees or providers join our organization. After that, we offer other training. Can you give any examples, alone on the front, or asking people to watch the movies regarding Capitaine Perron in '95. There are resources like Atlas. We also have clinical doctors who offer training on mental health and substance abuse. Ms. Lockyer mentioned having an inside knowledge, and I hope that you can answer regarding providers what the impact is if you don't truly understand the reality and you're trying to offer services to veterans.
Thank you for the question, Madam Chair. I think the reality is if you're working with veterans without understanding military culture, we are not setting up the program accordingly. And so there are about, I think, 12 mandatory training courses that RSS take and a little bit more for our service providers as well. To your point, there's videos, there's intervention. If we do receive a complaint from a veteran about a clinic, about a front desk staff, anyone, we immediately go in and retrain and have performance mechanisms in place to address situations. As the program scaled, of course, things were moving quickly. We did have some challenges and complaints, and we dealt with them. And I think that's the key. We are identifying gaps and dealing with them very quickly. Mandatory training is in place. Not everyone takes training in at the same pace, of course.
On serait pas ici à en parler.
We wouldn't be here talking about this if we didn't need to shed a light on the 25, 30, 40%, and we won't just talk about data, we need to talk about people. There are people who are suffering and receiving support, and that it takes 6 days before that, and for somebody who finally takes the time to make a call for help, if it needs to be a direct hotline. If nobody is there to answer overnight, well, then somebody can act and take their own lives. And we have heard from people, they have come to speak to us, even if 3/4 of services are good enough, well, we want to focus on those who are still struggling. Now, regarding service delivery, I'm sure that you have read the report from June. Veterans First is the report from June, and it's the School of Public Policy from McGill University that created this report, and I will read some things. LifeMark requires its mental health providers to have a professional diploma that is relevant and a permit for mental health services. There are no standards regarding cultural competencies or expertise for these people who are working with the veteran population. I find that concerning. Imagine, we hear from our veterans who are saying that they don't know who to turn to. They are exhausted and are tired of feeling unheard. What can you respond to them? And we have this information in the report.
Effectivement, nous.
Since 2022, we created training in order to standardize elements of our service providers. We want to support these service providers and offer them the resources that they need. We cannot forget that the program brings together cultural competencies, but also rehabilitation competencies and improving services. And so providers need to strike a balance between both of those elements while recognizing that, apologies, Dr. Bourgeois, I've had to interrupt you twice now, and I apologize. Ms. Gaudreau knows that her time is up, and I do need to interrupt you. I apologize. For 5 minutes now, for this next round of questions, Ms. Wagenthal will have the floor.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for being here today. You are clearly prepared. I have a question about something that I heard that is deeply concerning to me in response to the number of veterans that have come very apprehensively under a lot of duress to share their stories with me you indicated, I'm sorry, I don't remember, I think it was Ms. Bennett, that this program is voluntary. To me, that is kind of like this government saying that our law-abiding firearms owners have a voluntary opportunity to have their firearms confiscated. Quite honestly, this is not voluntary. I've had many come to me that want to continue with the care they've had, or simply want a little bit of direction, and they're told they cannot get any help, they cannot get any care or funding unless they go through an assessment. And this assessment is, once again, another challenge to them because they've done these assessments. I'm talking about individuals who are already in programs and getting care, and now have had to flip over and adjust to a new system. Why is it that an assessment is required of individuals who are already getting care, are very happy with the care that they're getting, and are being told they have no choice if they want to continue with care? Who would like to answer that in 30 seconds?
Madam Chair. Very quickly, it's the program that we have. We have treatment benefits for veterans with their service-related injuries and illnesses. That program is in place. Veterans can continue that. The rehabilitation program is separate. It is a voluntary program.
What I'm asking is for individuals that are already involved in rehabilitation.
As part of the rehabilitation program, the first step is an assessment to understand.
Already involved, they're already getting rehabilitative care. We have VAC that is way behind in dealing with all of its files. And here we are creating more complications for veterans who are happy, content, getting the care that they need. And it's being provided through VAC, and they have to go through this again. So my question then is, of those that are providers through this new program, can we see the paperwork that has gone into determining what qualifications, experience, and performance metrics are required for those providers? Can I get a copy of what those are, yes or no? For the committee. Thank you so much. And then it says, for providers to join or to remain in PCVRS. How many providers who were already serving veterans have remained within this program?
I can definitely go back and look and get a precise number for you, but the
That'd be great.
12,000 independent community providers that we brought into the network generally are coming in because they have an affiliation and or previous experience with veterans care.
I would like to know the number that were already treating veterans, maintain their ability to treat those veterans, because I do hear from them as well. I appreciate that. So you would provide that to the committee in the next
Precision.
week or so.
Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So an assessment is required. My next question would be, when that assessment is done, who gets to see it? Because I have had veterans say that they've been assessed, but they never get to see their assessment before it's handed out other places. Do veterans sign off? Do they have an opportunity to see what was determined by the person doing the interview and assessment before it is shared within your organization?
When participants engage in the assessment to determine rehab potential, which is different from an assessment for disability and pension award. But when that assessment is completed, where rehab needs and rehab potential is identified, it is considered an independent assessment. Therefore, the report goes back to the RSS and case manager for review. But our providers, our assessors are encouraged to provide verbal feedback at the end of the session.
To the veteran?
To the veteran.
Okay, why does the veteran not see that assessment? Because from what I understand, when push came to shove, this particular veteran through VAC was able to sign off, but it was found out it was after it had already been shared extensively. So
Thank you very much, Mrs. Wagenthal. I apologize. You're done. I apologize.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now for 5 minutes, Mrs. Ertl.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, everyone. Nice to see you all here. I was not a member when I'm just a new member, so the contract, of course, was signed before I was even aware of it. So wondering if you could tell me, the LifeMark folks, PCVRS was introduced to modernize and streamline rehabilitation and vocational services for veterans across the country. Can you give a very brief summary of the problem that this was designed to solve?
Very brief summary would be that there was essentially the case manager in the center, going to a physio, going to an occupational therapist, going to a mental health practitioner. But that team of care providers were not coming together around a functional improvement plan in regards to rehabilitation. So very specific to rehabilitation, functional assessment and functionability. So what are their functional abilities? And then how do we bring a team-based approach together with the veteran at the center? So every rehabilitation plan, there's essentially the veteran, the case manager, and the RSS that are meeting to sign off on that rehabilitation plan. And that allows us to have more individualized, but also team-based care approach to how rehabilitation is provided and accountable, as Dr. Boucher.
Lovely, thank you. So can you explain how this model is improving national consistency, which I think was one of the main goals? And and just to add on to that, are you still keeping veterans' individual needs at the center of this decision-making process?
If I may, Madam Chair, we absolutely are. In terms of standardized approach, we have standardized tools, standardized assessments. We have an approach that veterans from coast to coast should receive the same rehabilitation services. We did not have that prior to PCVRS. It was a very different approach. It was fragmented. We did not have consistency of services, and veterans were not achieving the desired outcome. They were staying in the program much longer than they should have been. They weren't achieving the outcomes. Right now, with the current model, we are seeing that veterans, 74% are reporting positive outcomes, increased functional capacity, 84% are reporting and improved satisfaction as well.
So how has this been addressed to make the program work better for veterans, I guess is the question.
With the implementation of PCVRS, we've reduced the administrative caseload from case managers. We've got PCVRS, a dedicated rehabilitation team that works with the veterans to do the assessments and to follow the treatment process or the rehabilitation process. It's much more structured and formalized, and we're seeing more positive outcomes as a result.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Hicks, I'll stick with you. For obviously a contract this size, there needs to be some accountability built into it. So can you describe the quality assurance and performance monitoring tools that VAC uses to ensure that the veterans are receiving the timely, high-quality rehabilitation services through PCVRS?
Absolutely. We built as part of the contract, we built a strong quality assurance, quality performance measurement framework that includes standardized assessments. We're monitoring service standards, the quality of the reports. We do file reviews. We monitor the time from assessment to intake. There's a variety of measures that we do have in place to measure the performance of the contract.
Thank you. And if can you also then speak briefly about what takes place when there are issues, if there are systemic issues identified, what takes place to then address those?
Sure. We work very closely with PCVRS when we identify themes or trends or issues. Then we work with our colleagues in field operations, the case managers. We work with our PCVRS colleagues to address those challenges. We've made numerous improvements over the life of the contract, from improved training to our case managers, messaging, and additional messaging for veterans. We've put provider bulletins out. We've clarified some of the relationships with some of the providers that we work with. So we've made numerous improvements over the course of the contract, and we continue to do so.
Okay, I see that I have 10 seconds left, so I think that's probably it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Maintenant, ça va être Madame Gaudreau, mais seulement pour...
Ms. Gaudreau, you have the floor for 2.5 minutes. And so let's be concise. Ms. Gaudreau? Thank you, Chair. I still feel like we're only talking about improvements, how we're doing a great job, patting ourselves on the back, but we just carried out a study on cases of suicide. We want to value these people. And what can I say to those who are calling me in my office saying that they're waiting, they've got no news, there's a shared file, but they've had to share their story 4 times. And I said it to you earlier, there's a report on this. It's not one person amid 12,000. What can we do for these people? Because they're listening to us now. And they're listening to you saying that everything is going well, but it's not going well for them. What performance indicators do you have to ensure that these services are suitable? How do you ensure that you have an appropriate agreement with VAC?
Madam Chair, there are numerous ways that we look at the satisfaction. At the beginning of the program, we survey the veterans to see how they're doing. We do it at the midpoint, we do it at the end point. So we are getting feedback from veterans throughout their rehabilitation journey. We take that feedback very seriously. What I would suggest is anyone that is suffering, is not getting the feedback, they gotta let us know. Speak to their case manager, report it, because it's not acceptable. Sometimes people do slip through the cracks, and we do not want that, but it does happen, and they need to let us know, because I'm very much appreciative that they're contacting you, but they need to let us know so that we can react and respond immediately, because we are committed to do so.
Ben là, je pense qu'il y en a vraiment des milliers qui nous regardent.
There are thousands who are going to be watching this, so I hope that you have a lot of people ready, because when they call us, it's because they've been reaching out and haven't received a response. Are you satisfied with the performance criteria that you have for service delivery at this time? Are you satisfied with the contract? Oh, my time is up. Apologies. Thank you. I really take all of this to heart. Thank you, Chair.
Désolé.
Apologies.
Minutes, Mr. Viersen.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to the witnesses for being here today. To VAC a little bit, we've heard from a number of witnesses on this. We've read the news articles about this. It appears to me that this whole system has a trust deficit. The public is concerned around this company being bought, LifeMark being bought by Shoppers Drug Mart, Loblaws. You hear that come up more often. You hear service providers who have worked with veterans for years and years and are now being said, you have to become a LifeMark partner. There's concern around, there's trust issues there when they're saying, like, we've worked very hard to build a system of care. That's kind of our thing, and now LifeMark wants us to fill out all these forms basically explaining like our trade secrets, essentially. So there's a trust deficit there. And then we have a trust deficit from veterans as well, who are going through the system, who have been working with the service provider and seeing, no, you can no longer go to that service provider, you got to go to a LifeMark one. There seems to be some pressure in the system pushing veterans, pushing service providers in one particular direction. And there isn't a line of sight back to say, oh, that makes sense. Like that, we understand why that is. There's been maybe a failure to communicate, but I guess the question is how are you addressing that trust deficit? How do we get over that hurdle? And now we've been in this for 5 years. This contract's up for renewal. The chaos looks like it's about to start all over again. How do we alleviate all of that trust issue?
Certainly the information that we have, we're working with PCVRS, we're working with our case managers to identify or to address some of the issues that we hear. We have provided additional training, additional communication, and we're working with veterans. Certainly, we have enhanced processes, we've streamlined processes. So there is a lot of work that we've done to improve, and I think the outcomes that we have right now, when we measure veterans, we're hearing 74% are measured improved functional capacity and improved outcomes. Those are scientific. Those are outcomes that we measure. And then 84% are improving satisfaction. So we can't underestimate that. Certainly there are veterans that and providers that don't have a positive experience, and we're working with them to look at how we can address the concerns that they have raised.
One of the other alarming concerns that I heard was around veterans who perhaps didn't want to participate in the new program were then they said that they felt like, and I'm not sure that it's actually true, but they felt like their financial benefits that they were receiving from VAC were being threatened because they were being administered by PCVRS. Is like that is the perception? Is that a real perception? How do we alleviate that? Is that why are we getting that noise coming out of the system?
Because the rehabilitation program is, as I've indicated, is a voluntary program. While veterans are participating in that program, then they're eligible for the income replacement benefit while they're in the program. If they leave the program or they have a diminished earnings capacity, then they might get income replacement long term. But if they're not actively participating in the rehabilitation program, then they may not get the income replacement benefit. There are strict measures that we do have in place that we just don't kick people out of the program. We measure and assess, and we make sure we work with veterans to identify any of the challenges that they experience. And sometimes veterans are not ready for rehabilitation.
Okay, that didn't make it any clearer to me. I guess a number of them have come forward saying that they were say they were in a program, they were said we had to move to a new program, and then were said if you don't go to the new program, your benefits are gone. Can you try one more time for me there?
So PCVRS is a rehabilitation program. So we changed our model from providers through Medavie Blue Cross to PCVRS. It's all the rehabilitation program. In order to receive the income replacement benefit, you have to be participating in the rehabilitation program. If veterans choose not to participate, then they would not.
Yeah, I'm getting it. You can see how that doesn't feel very voluntary, right? Like when you're saying you must move from this current program that you're in to this current program, and if you don't move to that program, you lose your benefits.
Thank you very much, Mr. Viersen. I apologize sincerely. I have to interrupt you. Thank you. Mr. Saint-Pierre pour 5 minutes.
Merci. Si vous me permettez.
Thank you. I will be asking my questions in French. I would like to thank all of the witnesses for being with us today. I know that 2 hours is a lot of time, so I would like to thank you for your patience. I will start with you, Ms. Hicks.
Understand French, or it's being translated? Perfect. Le PCVRS a été mis en place pour.
The PCVRS was implemented in order to modernize and streamline rehabilitation services and vocational services for veterans at a national level. Can you summarize the issue that this was created, that you are seeking to resolve?
Yeah, absolutely, Madam Chair. There's many challenges that we had with the old system with prior to PCVRS. So, for example, services were not consistent. It was not rehabilitation focused or specialized. Veterans were in the program for an inordinate period of time. We also have case managers. There was a lot of administrative burden on our case managers. They had to find the providers. They had to coordinate the appointments. They had to get the follow-up progress reports and things. So there was a lot of burden on our on our case managers. So all of this, there was an evaluation that was done approximately 12 years ago on rehabilitation, case management services, and they recommended that we needed to make change. As a result, we looked at the model and we decided to develop a new model that specialized in rehabilitation where veterans would have access to rehabilitation specialists as opposed to just general providers, and to reduce the burden on our case managers. It was intended to be a more intense model and with standardized processes, so veterans, when they came into the program, they would have the same experience coast to coast.
Merci. Puis, d'après vous, est-ce
Do you believe that this model has streamlined things nationally? Is it meeting people's needs better? Is it meeting the needs of our veterans? Perhaps you can focus on the national strategy as well.
Oui, il y avait beaucoup d'améliorations. I think
there were a lot of improvements.
Big difference, certainly in terms of standardized tools, standardized processes. We're seeing better outcomes. Certainly, it's not meeting the needs of everybody. Veterans come to us with very complex needs. Many of them have complex physical and mental health needs, and it takes time to work through this, and it doesn't work for everybody. That being said, whenever we have a robust issue reporting process in place, and we respond to the concerns expressed by veterans, and certainly we work with them to resolve any issues they encounter. But we are seeing more positive results and more positive outcomes, and certainly satisfaction as well.
Et puis aussi concrètement.
And more concretely, is it changing things on the field? Can you talk about the impact there and on the speed of service delivery? Are services better adapted and more responsive in your view?
Je vais répondre à cette question, Madame la...
I will answer the question, Chair. We've heard that people are dissatisfied, but if we look at the facts, there has been an improvement. Jane was talking about administrative tasks that had to be carried out by our case managers, coordinating, finding these service providers. With PCVRS now, they're working with one person. It's up to the provider to find the other providers. So that is no longer up to the case managers. When we implemented this program, our case managers told us before that they didn't have enough time with the veterans. They wanted to be able to spend more time with them. And things have changed since getting that program. And if we look over a period of 6 months before the implementation of the contract and we look at things now, we can see that there's a 25% increase in contact with veterans. These are facts that we need to take into consideration when we talk about the improvements made by the program. My colleague from the bloc is in the Laurentides, a little bit further out than me in Montreal. And can you tell us more about how services are created in the regions? In the regions, as you know, it is a challenge for healthcare and for other networks. And so with the service provider, we did talk about these 15,000 providers, and we want to find providers in the areas of where veterans are. Thank you. We're going to take about a 5-minute break. We have you with us for 2 hours, so perhaps some time to take a sip of water. I'll give us all 5 minutes to suspend.
Continuer. Merci beaucoup. J'aimerais maintenant, I would like to ask Mr. Tomey for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just would like to piggyback on some of the comments that have been made earlier on. When I'm sitting here in this chair, I cannot tell the difference between VAC, PCVRS, or LifeMark. And I want to know where the line of accountability is for veterans. I'd like to thank my colleague from across the aisle for going through all the recommendations and getting one-word answers. But I'm going to dig a little bit deeper. Ms. Hicks, earlier on you said that we received a copy of a report, and I'd like to know why we haven't seen that report. When was that report delivered? Because I'm being told the previous minister, did not receive that report on time, and that was flagged with her, and we haven't received it.
Madam Chair, my understanding it was tabled with ACVA. It was recommendation number 9 that there was a report that was tabled with the committee.
Sorry, Madam Chair. Your understanding is different from saying that it was tabled and that we received it. So I'd like to know an answer.
So I apologize. I will allow a few extra seconds. Our clerk is verifying this. Mr. Tomey, so continue.
I'll continue on.
Well, I can suspend if you want to check.
I'll continue on. I've got other questions. We have heard from veterans that have gone through sanctuary trauma, now institutional harm, and I'm going to argue that hearing the witnesses today survivor bias, where the reports that you're getting are from people that have gone through the system and not from vets who have had challenges because they're being threatened with their benefits. And they're not getting the quality of service that are due to them. So, I'm going to ask a few more questions. Mr. Deschamps, you said that veterans are encouraged to use providers. Could you define encouraged? Because what I'm hearing from veterans, it's being threatened.
What I said that providers are encouraged to join the PCVRS network. And by joining the PCVRS network, they agree to, four things, which is complete the VAC-approved training, agree to use VAC-approved report templates, and to report at specified frequency.
What other choices do they have?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
Okay, I'll continue on. Through you, Madam Chair, we have veterans that are being threatened that if they change providers, they will lose their benefits. So there is no continuity of care, as Ms. Hicks brought up, because veterans are being forced to leave care providers that they've already have relationships and established care programs with to go with something through PCVRS or LifeMark. So that relationship is broken. So there is no continuity of care. Ms. Bennett, you brought up compassionate care. That's not compassionate. You're now severing relationships for veterans who are fragile, who have suffered from PTSD. Could you please explain your view of compassionate care?
Madam Chair, thank you for the question. The member raises a very good point. Compassionate care from the perspective of PCVRS is supporting veterans based on their needs, understanding their needs.
Madam Chair, that's the essence of the problem, is it's your view. I want the veteran's view of care, and I'm not hearing that from this panel. I'll let you continue on.
So, thank you, Madam Chair. The first thing that happens when a veteran is referred to PCVRS is they're assigned a rehabilitation service specialist who meets with them and becomes their trusted point of contact and supports them through their whole rehabilitation journey. That process involves in-depth conversations and interviews of understanding what the veteran's needs are from their voice, from their perspective. And that philosophy, that level of care and concern for the veteran from their perspective continues with them the entire time they are with PCVRS.
Thank you very much. Now for 5 minutes, Mrs. Fancy.
Thank you very much, Chair. Through you, I would love to thank all of our witnesses that we have here today, especially for those on our witness panel and also those colleagues that are with us today who are have served in the past, that are veterans themselves. Myself, I have a family where my ex-husband was in the service and did tours of Syria, Lebanon, and Israel. So very well aware of some of those traumas that come after having served, as well as different streams of care that can be administered. Maybe if this would have been available many years ago, maybe we would still be together. I'm also a former high school administrator where I am very well aware of continuous improvement, always trying to do better by our kiddos. So I'd like to also go along this line in terms of our veterans and that continuous care and improvement, indicators for success. So I was wondering first, maybe Ms. Lockyer, if you could share with us at the committee here, what kinds of success indicators that you look at as preparations to progress or completion of rehabilitation plans, et cetera? Thank you.
Absolutely, Madam Chair. So we meet, well, me, Tanya and I, with the committee to review progress against sort of feedback. I actually have a paper in front of me right now on all the feedback that we've gotten from veterans, some of it positive, some of it critical. And we take every piece of feedback that we get extremely seriously and use for continuous improvement. A good example of this, and Mr. Deschamps can weigh in on this as well, is the assessment templates were not, we got feedback that they were a bit too long, a bit too comprehensive. Providers weren't liking them. Veterans thought there were too many questions. We adapted them. We worked with VAP. We adapted the assessment templates. And we are moving forward based on providers' preference as well as veterans' preference. So that's a good example of continuous improvement. We have 2 major IT changes that are coming to reduce the administrative burden on the RSSs so that they can spend more time speaking with veterans directly and be available when they call and have that one-to-one contact. So I would say continuous improvement is actually a big underpinning of this program. Like any new national large program rolling out, we learned a lot over the first 2 years of implementation, and a lot has changed.
So in terms of learning a lot for yourself or your associate beside you, could you give us an example then of those course corrections, seeing as you have that whole sheet in front of you? Absolutely. In terms of feedback that you've received? So what was a point where, something isn't going well, and an example of that course correction and what that newly developed criteria looks like? Thank you.
For sure.
So from feedback that we've received from providers, one of the complaints was that our reporting frequency for med psychosocial, so phys med was required, progress reports were due every 4 weeks, and versus med psychosocial were required every 8 weeks. And after feedback from providers where they were reporting that the frequency of reporting was too much, and we've recently updated our reporting frequency to now 8 weeks for med for phys med, and now 12 weeks for for the med psychosocial portion.
Thank you very much. Now, do you have any examples or indicators from veterans? So that was from one of your service providers, as my colleague across the way just mentioned earlier about this is the veterans are here with what we're at the heart of doing. So I want some examples from the actual veterans. Thanks.
One of the complaints was really on the participant portal, and in the participant portal they have access to a calendar where appointments are being displayed. Currently the LifeMark appointments are being displayed for all future treatments, but not necessarily for all of the affiliates, and therefore creates confusion in the calendars for participants, as well as multiple appointments showing on the same day. So there's an improvement in the calendar that's going up in the next deployment for our IT release.
Thank you. I'd like to turn my questioning now to Veterans Affairs. A similar line of questioning, if you could let our committee know the kinds of success indicators that you at VAC look at, such as the participation progress, such as the completion of the rehabilitation plans, and client experiences. Thank you.
Approximately 23,000 veterans referred to the PCVRS program. We work through with PCVRS, with our field operations staff and our case managers to receive regular feedback in terms of how the program is going. We met a year and a half ago to talk about some of the pain points that were happening, some of the veteran experiences, some of the case managers. We developed a plan focusing on communication, service delivery, and data and some training. So there was things that we need to do. Sometimes expectations. We were not communicating what was required as part of the rehabilitation program, so we enhanced our communications.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Hicks. And just for answering Mr. Tomey's questions and to help, we were able to find that information. So before, Madame Godot, si vous me permettez, the documents and questions was shared on December 4th, 2023. By the former clerk, so a little while ago, and it was sent to all committee members under correspondence and reference document in the e-binder. That's how it was done, and that's, I would say, before I assumed the chair and our greffier, but it was sent and distributed to all members of Parliament on December 4, 2023 at 3:50 p.m. exactly. Merci. Just want to make sure I like exact things to be said. Oh, and our greffier will share.
Thank you. And to add on to what the chair has mentioned, the e-binders from previous legislatures, so this would have been in the previous legislature, that e-binder is not available. So it's much more difficult to find documents from previous legislatures.
That's something we can talk, but so sorry. Excusez-nous, Madame Gaudreau, je voulais juste clarifier pour les membres.
I just wanted to clarify that for committee members.
Pour 2 minutes et demie, Madame Gaudreau.
Merci.
2.5 minutes, Ms. Gaudreau. Thank you. Let's go back to basics here. Am I bothering you, Ms. Wagenthal? Because it bothers me. So, we want to do things correctly. We don't get up in the morning telling ourselves that we're not going to do a good job. However, sometimes you have to respond that you're doing what you can with what you have. And so, what are you missing, Ms. Hicks, so that it's not 74% of people who are satisfied with the improvements? What are you missing to reach that 100% satisfaction? Let's talk freely here. What resources do you need?
I think we have the resources in place to actually deliver a solid rehabilitation program. There's things that we can do ourselves to improve, and we are improving our communications, our training, and our interactions with veterans. We will be embarking upon a consultation with veterans and employees in the next month to seek their feedback specifically on the program. So it's not the quantitative data, but the qualitative perspective. They'll be asked to complete a survey, but also they'll be offered an opportunity to provide a one-on-one interview regarding the rehabilitation program.
Parce que notre rôle, là, en fait, c'est aussi...
We need to support you in finding out what you need. We'll be meeting with the minister. We'll ask her the same question, and we'll need to see if we need to bring this up with cabinet and the prime minister. And so we need to act. And if you're not going to tell us that you need more funding, more resources, if you don't share your concerns with us, and, well, if you say that everything is going well, then we will put the blame on you. But if there are any issues, you need to share them with us. I have 15 seconds left, so I'll ask you the same question at my next round of questions. You have 20 seconds if anybody would like to respond. Would you like to start an answer or come back to it?
Chair,
Quickly.
10 seconds.
Yeah.
We are still early in the program, and the 25% of veterans that are not progressing the way we want them to progress and the way we expect them to progress and the way we're trying to get them to progress, we need to lean in there, and we will lean in there. We need to understand where the gaps are, and we are learning them. This is still an early program, and we're committed to filling them.
Merci. Thank you, Ms. Lockyer. Pour 5 minutes, for 5 minutes, Mr. Richards.
So there seems to be sort of two versions of the story here, right? We're hearing today, everything's wonderful. It's all great. You know, things are going great. All these improvements are happening. And then there's a story we hear from veterans. Even some of the veterans in the room with us today expressed during the break how frustrating it is to listen to this today, because it's not the reality they're hearing from, they're seeing and that they're hearing from their colleagues in the veteran community. And it's why this committee needs to extend the study and hear from more veterans, because we're hearing everything's great, but veterans aren't getting a chance to have their voice heard here. But I'd like to touch on a couple of the things that we hear consistently from veterans. The first one is the amount of how they feel just buried in bureaucracy. This is a general thing when they're dealing with Veterans Affairs. They feel like like wait times are too long. There's constant need to reprove things that already everyone's well aware exist. There's delays, denials. It seems to be never ending. And then this contract came about, and now it feels like they've got two bureaucracies, overlapping bureaucracies that they're dealing with. They're suffocating them in bureaucracy. And they don't even really know where they're supposed to turn, right? And I'm just going to reference a couple things from a Toronto Star article over the weekend that just kind of highlight this, because it at least gives a little bit of a voice to veterans. The Star talked to 30 different veterans and 11 different healthcare professionals, and they described, as the article says, they described a bureaucracy rife with delays and redundant assessments. And then it talks about this testimony we heard from a clinician on a different study, calling it bureaucracy to the point of absurdity, saying the program seems to exist for its own sake by piling on administrative requirements to make that process extremely cumbersome and painful for the veteran and irritating and suffocating for the professional. And then there was an experienced VAC case manager that talked about program being, and I quote, is all geared around feeding the system, feeding the money into PCVRS. And then the final thing I'll mention from the article, I think really says it all. Under the rehabilitation program, eligible veterans are assigned a VAC case manager and an RSS working for PCVRS. While case managers are dubbed decision makers in the contract, PCVRS staff are responsible for developing rehabilitation plans and conducting assessments, including a veteran's ability to hold a job and eligibility for benefits. Decisions related to benefits are made by VAC, the department said. When you listen to that, it's like, I don't even know. It clearly is telling everyone that no one has a clue who's making the decisions about what. And I think that even exists amongst the workers themselves that are expected to do these things. So how are veterans supposed to figure it out? And I guess my question to the Veterans Affairs folks with us here, do you acknowledge these problems and these concerns, and what are you doing about them?
First, Madam Chair, I just want to acknowledge the experiences described in the Toronto Star are serious and concerning, and certainly we take those very seriously, and we will be following up. And, we do have veterans that do have concerns.
I just want to interrupt you for a second, because it's not just about some things that were expressed in the Toronto Star. These have been things we've been hearing from veterans for the last few years. I'm sure you've heard them as well. So, it's great to say we're going to follow up on these things we heard in the Toronto Star, but we've been hearing these things for a few years. Nothing seems to be changing. If anything, it seems to be getting worse. What do you acknowledge there's problems here? Do you agree that there's some things that need to change so that veterans can have a better experience?
Madam Chair, I acknowledge that there are certainly challenges in the system, and if I had been allowed to continue, then I would have indicated that we do hear from veterans that there are concerns, and when we do, we work with them 100%. It's early days. We are working to improve the system. Veterans Affairs is accountable and responsible to deliver the rehabilitation program. We work with PCVRS, who is our partner in delivering the services. The case manager is the pivotal individual that makes the decisions with respect to rehabilitation and eligibility on VAC programs and services.
Thank you very much. You have a second left, Mr. Richards. Thank you. Now for 5 minutes, Mr. Casey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to go back to the testimony of February 23rd, and this is for our guests from LifeMark and PCVRS. Feel free to respond as you wish amongst you. Dr. Béchand completed his testimony, and the last thing he said to us in his opening statement was, do LifeMark and PCVRS really care about veterans? The current program clearly answers no to that question. In fairness to you, you should have a chance to respond to that. Please do.
Yeah, thank you. Madam Chair, I think we definitely care about veterans. I can tell my personal story. When I was approached to take the leadership role at LifeMark, the reason I joined LifeMark was for this program. I knew it was just kicking off. We're roughly a year and a half into implementation. And from day one, I brought the veterans' voice to the table. We have been pushing on, and we talk about what you guys hear at the table, what you read in the Star. We live it every day. So yes, we've gotten complaints, and yes, we've addressed them. We've gotten really good as well. And so right now, my call to action for everyone who's listening is please tell us. So if you're given a survey, satisfaction survey, fill it out. We can only react and respond to the information that's presented to us. And when I say that at 2 years roughly, or 3 years now in live programs, 74% of participants are reporting good functional gains from the program. That's actually industry standard. I'm not reacting to it in a negative way, but I'm also not saying that our work is done. This is an early program. It's an important program. And to say that we don't care about veterans is actually an insult.
Thank you. Anyone else?
If I may,
Dr. Bourgeois?
from a clinical perspective, this program has clinical leadership, chief psychiatry, chief psychology, occupational health, medicine, and we are constantly looking at quality, at standards, at risk mitigation, at safety, serving as oversight, serving to develop constant training in order ultimately for ethical care, for compassionate care, and trauma-informed care. So yes, we do care about the veterans, which is ultimately why we're all here doing what we do every day.
Thank you very much. There was a Sean Carter who was a provider contracted by you that testified on that day as well. And we've had a bit of a discussion here today around continuous improvement. He pointed to 2 specific examples that I'd just like to share with you, and if you have anything to add to what he said. He talked about continuous improvement and specifically that there was something initiated with PCVRS to strengthen step-down and transition supports, recognizing that a particularly vulnerable time for many veterans is when they're discharging out of intensive treatment. And he also referred to the EHN Guardians Family Program. Could you expand a bit more on those improvements and how they came to be and what impact they had?
The rehab program ultimately is about removing barriers to functioning at home, community, and work that is negatively impacted by service-related health condition. And so we have built clinical pathways that support the veteran where they're at in terms of whether they require clinical stabilization from a medical rehab perspective, or they're at the phase of needing to learn to live with a certain amount of symptoms and chronicity, while empowering them to be functioning better in what roles are important to them at home, community, and work. And so through continuous improvement, we've built pathways that look at more high needs clients, more moderate needs and low needs, and we have pathways that start where they need to start and support handovers when one phase needs to lead to another until they reach their own goals of functioning at home and or community, and for some at work. And so our network has specialized intensive inpatient right down to an individual provider in the community who will wean off and then discharge ultimately and close the file in rehab.
Thank you, Dr. Bourgeois.
Thank you very much, Dr. Bourgeois. For 5 minutes, Mr. Richards.
Sure. Thank you. I mentioned there was a couple of things I wanted to touch on. The other one was, it's come up a few times already today, but we hear it all the time from veterans, and it's this being forced to work with the providers within the PCVRS network, and it's been described as optional today. But the option is essentially a veteran can say, "Well, I'll give up my IRB," or they have to utilize the providers they're being told they have to utilize. It's not really much of an option. That's a really terrible option if that's the option they're being given, right? And I think I'll just refer to a couple of quotes from this Toronto Star article again, if I can, and then I've got a question about how we can proceed in the future. It was described in the article by that it says frequently the program is asking veterans to cut ties with clinicians who do not affiliate with the PCVRS network, disrupting treatments. And then in another spot in the article, it refers to a retired sergeant that alleged that a PCVRS staffer repeatedly used her hard-earned benefits as leverage to try to make her switch providers. And then also there was a psychologist that indicates that there seems to be a bias in PCVRS against out-of-network providers, and says, how on earth can they formulate treatment plans without talking to the primary provider? So, and then I'll just close with the comments of the veteran I referred to earlier, said that when she objected to leaving her psychologist, the RSS's tone turned, as she said, highly aggressive. The woman threatened to cut off all benefits that I was receiving from Veterans Affairs unless I agreed to change doctors and follow PCVRS's treatment plan. And the upsetting threats went on for weeks until her psychologist intervened to request that PCVRS only contact her by email. She says, I gave 40 years of my life to my country, and to have someone threaten me to cut off my benefits for all the work I did for my country, that just makes my blood boil. And I mention that one because it's the kind of thing we've heard from veterans time and time again. So there's this kind of, it's presented as a choice, but it's not really a choice. Veterans aren't really given the choice. And there's so many service providers that have done good work and are being told they can no longer work with their veterans. So clearly there's a problem. And rather than focus on debating that problem, I'd like to talk about the solutions and what we can do going forward. So maybe Ms. Hicks or whoever from Veterans Affairs, you could indicate, I mean, this contract's coming up for renewal. What could be done different when we set this up the next time to make sure that veterans are able to work with the providers they want to be able to work with?
One of the things that Madam Chair, one of the things we're working on right now is clarifying the providers, the program, the messaging, so that when veterans understand the expectations when they go into a program, when they can keep their providers, when they may focus or work with other providers, rehab specialists, and what the purpose of those providers are. Sometimes there's people don't understand the expectations when they go into the program, and obviously you're hearing that there is confusion as to when providers can be retained or not, but that's something that we will be clarifying going forward.
Well, and I appreciate that, but I don't think it's just confusion. I mean, there seems to be, like we hear all the time that their benefits are being threatened and things like that, right? So there's obviously an issue there. Is that something that's considered acceptable under this contract? What can you do to put a stop to that?
First of all, threatening a veteran is not acceptable, and that needs to be escalated so we can deal with that. That being said, in order to receive the income replacement benefit, you have to be participating in the rehabilitation program, and that is based on the VAC legislation and our policy. It doesn't have anything to do with PCVRS. They're delivering based on the rules of that we have in place, or the framework that we have in place.
I'm certainly not suggesting it is a PCVRS thing. This is obviously a problem within the system, and that's what I'm getting at here. Is what can we do to fix that? Because when we hear this repeatedly from veterans all the time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Richards. I apologize sincerely. Next round, you will have a chance. Mrs. Ertl for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So one of the stated goals of PCVRS was to free up case managers at VAC to deal with other issues. What does that look like in practical terms for case managers? And maybe it's Ms. Hicks that can, or Ms. Pham.
I mean, since we introduced PCVRS, they can spend more time with veterans, as I stated before. but also a lot of the administrative tasks. As you can hear, case manager were saying that they had to spend a lot of their time coordinating, going from finding provider to billing issues. It all went through the case manager. So with PCVRS, those tasks they no longer need to handle. We can talk about all the bureaucracy that associated to their job, but and those are like a list of things that we have removed, like less letters to send out, coordinating providers, following up with the providers, getting reports, the billing issues. Now they only have to deal with PCVRS. The other provider, they have to deal with PCVRS in terms of if there's billing issues. So all of that is the main purposes is to allow them to do their case management job, spend time following up with veterans. And so we will hear that they still find that they might still have administrative issue, but there is evidence that we have reduced them. Of course, now some may say we still have to follow up with PCVRS, but you're not following up with 12 providers anymore.
Sure. Thank you for that. I think, Ms. Lockyer, this one might come over to you. Wondering about mandatory training for your RSS folks. Is there training on military culture, trauma-informed care, service-related injuries, or maybe Dr. Bourgeois?
I can actually read the list if that'll be helpful for RSS, because we have it right here. So as I mentioned, there's over 10. So understanding veterans, fundamentals and service delivery parameters, mental health awareness, discussing suicidal ideations with participants, suicide risk protocols, program orientation, caregiver considerations for women veterans, particularly, RSS clinical approach, privacy security, obviously increasingly important these days, process and procedural training. So all that goes to say there is a big effort when we onboard our staff to get them sort of oriented and ready to serve. That being said, as I mentioned before, sometimes we have to retrain. We do watch quality and performance. We do terminate when things aren't going well. We also celebrate some of our RSSs. And I'm deeply aware right now that the Toronto Star article has actually impacted them as well, because a lot of our RSSs are doing extremely good work and they go above and beyond. And again, I'm happy to share some of the positive testimonies where veterans are saying their relationship with their RSS was one of the most meaningful, that rehab is really, it finally feels like rehab for me. And so I just want to, it's easy to make a bad news or a good news story about bad news, but there is good news as well. And I think we have to acknowledge that there's both. I'm not here to say that we have it all right. I don't think anyone at this table thinks that. That's not the nature of the meetings that we have. We actually don't spend enough time talking about what we have right. We're often in how are we failing? How do we do better? And that's why we're here today. We want to listen, and we want the voices of veterans at my table, at our table, so that we can respond.
So how were those 10 areas identified? How did you come up with those? Sure.
Pass over.
So that was developed in collaboration with VAC in terms of the areas that required specific training for the RSSs.
And was feedback received from veterans as part of that process, Ms. Hicks? Or anyone else?
Yes. We work with our field colleagues and to determine the training. We've also, as part of the implementation or development of the new contract, we consulted with our ministerial advisory group as well on some of the contract parameters, what we were moving forward with, why were we doing it, how are we doing it.
And our staff, our case manager, were also consulted. Like, what would some of the training that PCVRS would need? And I think some of these training also is part of our own onboarding. And so that was taken into consideration as well.
Okay, that's my time. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Now we will invite, just want to make sure she is ready, Mrs. Gaudreau pour 2 minutes et demie.
Merci, Ms. Gaudreau for 2.5 minutes. Thank you, Chair. So, you're saying that there are things that you don't have right now or you're not certain what you're missing, and you're stating that you need to hear about these cases. It's great to hear when things are going well, but we're focusing here on what's not going well. We need to have these hearings in order to make changes. And Chair, I would like to table a notice of a motion. I have both official languages. I'm going to read it slowly. Given the testimonies heard in this study, and given that the committee needs to hear from other witnesses, including healthcare professionals, researchers, and veterans, regarding the partners in Canadian Veterans Rehabilitation Services, that we add at least 3 two-hour meetings in order to continue this study on the contract awarded to PCVRS. Thank you, Ms. Goudreau. We had added 1 meeting, so you're proposing 3 additional meetings? I just want to be sure that I'm understanding. A minimum of 3 additional meetings is what I'm proposing. We can make changes depending on what we get, but we have received many, as a politician, I've heard many political responses, and we need to see what you're missing. There are veterans who are suffering and some are dying. Thank you. You have 20 seconds left, Ms. Goudreau. I would like to thank you for the work that you're doing and what you're trying to do. I have an obligation to support those who elected me, and I know that sometimes it is difficult to see all of the issues at hand. Thank you, Ms. Goudreau. That said, we're going to continue on with our Q&A. Ms. Wagenthal.
Thank you so much, Chair, and thank you for persevering with us today. It was commented that we're in the early days of this program. I think for some of you it's been a shorter amount of time, but this contract is set to expire or be reconsidered in December of 2026, correct? So in 2021, the years preceding its start with PCVRS, there were 14,377 participants in the VAC rehabilitation program, and as of March 31st of 2024, that dropped to 12,554. So that's a drop of 1,823 veterans. I'd like to think it's because everything's good. Can you very briefly tell me why? And because of that number dropping out, did those individuals lose their income replacement benefit?
Do you want me to take it?
Ms. Lockett?
Oh.
I would like, please.
Madam Chair. So when the program started, you mentioned 2021, we had a 2-year implementation period where we were getting all of our processes. We had actually had to build a net new IT system to sort of govern and sort of shape this. And then 10,000 veterans were waiting the day that we turned the program on. Right now we're seeing about 300 veterans a month entering the program, so it's natural that we would have had sort of a large number of veterans enter the program at one point, and now we see it steady state. So if you think 300 a month, and roughly 12 to 18 months, we should see the numbers come down.
Okay, so what happened to the 1,823 that were no longer part of the program at that time? Did they opt out? Did they not get their income replacement benefit?
I can hand it over to Mr. Jean.
Okay, just briefly, just to clarify for me.
So most likely rehabilitation potential was identified that no potential was further required, and then the participant would have moved. That's when we would recommend file closure, and that's when they would move to other VAC program like the DEC.
So it's been 2 years now since that drop. How many veterans are currently enrolled in the rehabilitation program?
11,700.
11,700. and they're all receiving the care that they need at this point in time. They've been processed through VAC to PCVRS, and they're now seeing providers.
So they would all be at different stages of their rehabilitation sort of journey. Some may be, currently in assessment phase. Some may be in treatment phase. Some may be in graduation.
An idea of how many are in each of those phases?
We do.
If you could provide that for me,
sure.
I would really appreciate it.
Yep.
Thank you. Okay, so we talk about rehab specialists. What I hear from veterans who have been receiving care previously, they see the people that have been serving them as specialists. And I'm sensing there's the experts and then there's the providers. And I struggle a little bit with what that means, because really it is those providers that have that relationship ability, all those things already in place. Do you try hard to keep those that were previously part of the services providers, or how many of them actually chose, because of the complications of process, dropped out? So how many quit? If you could tell me that.
So I can't tell you that precise number, but maybe a little bit more nuance on sort of how it works. The spirit of the program is that you are now transitioning into a specialist program. So think about like a general program into a specialist program. The continuum of care, and it hurts me when I hear that the providers that they currently have were not consulted, no one from PCVRS reached out to them. Like, that is not how the program was designed. And we can share more about that if you're interested. But the idea is that we're now moving into a specialist based on function, based on rehab. We're actually just looking at function in this program and improving function for veterans. It should be an and situation, not an or. And somehow I'm feeling that we've created an or situation here, where you can't continue to receive maintenance care, you can't continue getting the treatment you wish. It needs to be and.
20 seconds. I'll just say, I have loved ones that provide that care, and they are incredibly qualified. I'm concerned about the dynamics around this, making it more difficult for veterans to get the care from the people that they would choose to get it from. And I would recommend that whatever you do to determine whether or not they qualify, that veterans be able to see those providers and why they qualify.
Thank you very
when others
much. I
don't.
have to interrupt you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Pour le dernier 5 minutes, Monsieur.
For the last 5 minutes, Mr. Saint-Pierre.
Our panelists in français, in French, so please make sure you have your piece.
Mrs. Walker, maybe I'll proceed in English and then I'll proceed in French to Madame Bourgeois, just to switch it up. I got to get my friends on their feet. Well, first, thank you, Mrs. Lockyer, for your services. I think it's probably unanimous here that Canada needs a lot more people like you, so thank you for the services you've provided to Canada and defending our great country. I also appreciate that earlier you mentioned that generally the messaging you're receiving is quite positive, so it's easy to focus on the negative. Something that I'm seeing quite common in the House of Commons these days, but appreciate that you mentioned that overall the messaging is quite positive. I'm wondering if you could speak a little bit about what you've seen so far, like what has actually improved. And are veterans getting services faster or seeing better outcomes? So I'm wondering if you could speak to the better outcomes that veterans are receiving.
Absolutely, and access timelines alone, I think, speak for themselves. And so if, Ms. Bennett had mentioned that sort of referral to sort of first assessment, roughly 30 days. And if you think about that for a mental health appointment in Canada right now, like that is nowhere available. And we within the PCVRS network have allowed that to happen by bringing clinicians who are like-minded and committed to veterans to the table. So I think access alone has improved. And again, coming back to the inception of the program, there were definitely communities that we didn't really know where the veterans were going to need care when we first started the program. So as they were coming, we were building. But we've been building quickly. And so if you think about 15,000 today, we started with 4,000. If you think about 300 affiliates, now we have 600 affiliates. So we continue to build the network based on where the veterans are and what the needs are. So I think that's number one. The second piece is how do we continue to focus on improving the network? Because I get what you're saying in regards to positive. We want to be positive 100%. But that's not where I want to spend my time, especially the Toronto Star article and everything that I'm hearing here today. I hear the call to action. We need to understand the gaps and we need to focus on where we're going to fill them.
Thank you for that. And sometimes this discussion feels a little bit high level, and I'm wondering if you can maybe bring in some concrete examples, maybe speak to a story or two of what you're hearing on the ground in terms of the positive support that they're getting from this program.
Absolutely. And if you'll bear with me, I'd love to read sort of a veteran sort of feedback that they gave me that they allowed me to present in one of our town halls where we generally celebrate all wins. So the program has changed my life, and I am very grateful for the opportunity to participate fully in chasing my dreams to start a new career. Thank you to my VAC case manager and my PCVRS RSS for walking this journey with me these past few years. They've always went the extra mile to help me achieve my goals. The impacts of my PTSD on my working career in the military and afterwards in the corporate world weren't understood by me and had grave impacts on my career choices. Skip the middle part. I'm not just managing my symptoms anymore, I am recovering. My life has changed. It's been a godsend to be eligible for this support, and I threw myself into the program wholeheartedly, and I'm proud of all I've achieved. There are pages of these feedback, and I think it's important to know that we have gaps. And so I want to understand those gaps so we have more people writing these stories. But we can't negate that this program is working for some veterans and not for others. Important to stay focused. These are heartwarming testimonials. And again, I'll take it. Maybe I was like only listening to that. My ears are different today, and I appreciate your patience with that.
Thank you. I really appreciate you sharing those personal stories. Il reste seulement une minute, donc je vais aller en français avec Dr. Bourgeois.
I only have 1 minute left, so I'm going to go into French. Dr. Bourgeois, can you talk about access to mental health services? Can veterans receive support more quickly, perhaps in 45 seconds? You could talk about services that have a positive impact on veterans' mental health. Access to services depends on services, and we need to look at mental health issues. And so access for us is interdisciplinary. We offer mental health resources, but also we work with occupational therapists and physiotherapists. And who will work more on the physical side, even though there can be a chronic mental health issue as well. So we do want to improve the system.
Earlier you mentioned links to some of the reports of testimony. I'm wondering if you could provide that as testimony or reports to this committee, if you have a chance.
As long as we can de-identify them and ensure privacy, absolutely.
Well, thank you very much. Merci à nos témoins.
Thank you to our witnesses.
2 hours, so I really want to say thanks for joining us. Thank you for your contribution to our veterans community. And certainly, Mrs. Lockyer, thank you for your service again. Sur ce, notre prochaine réunion.
Our next meeting will be on Wednesday, the 25th of March, 2026. We'll be resuming our study on the monitoring of the rehabilitation services contract awarded to PCVRS. We will hear from witnesses and hear from the minister. Is it the will of the committee to adjourn the meeting? Adjourned.